Welcome to Always on Wire. Today we're talking about Anwar's e-invoicing exemption. We are jumping right into what is really a massive policy adjustment. It affects hundreds of thousands of small businesses across the country.
It really does.
Prime Minister and Finance Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim has announced a major reversal on mandatory e-invoicing. And, it all comes down to one number.
The 1 million mark.
Exactly. If your company has an annual turnover below 1 million ringgit, you are now completely exempted from this.
It's a huge development and, frankly, a necessary one. The story here isn't just the policy change itself, but the undeniable pressure that forced the administration's hand.
Okay, let's unpack that. Why the sudden change? We know the decision came out of a cabinet meeting, and it was a response to a huge outcry.
Yeah.
But for anyone listening who isn't deep in compliance rules, why was this such a burden?
It really just comes down to cost versus capacity. E-invoicing, at its core, it's a good tool. It's for digitalization, for creating a transparent digital trail to, combat tax leakage.
Right.
But you need infrastructure for that. For big companies, this means integrating new API systems with the Inland Revenue Board or upgrading their big enterprise resource planning software.
Which costs money.
A lot of money. Tens of thousands of ringgit plus maintenance, training. If you're doing, say, 50 million a year in revenue, that's nothing. It's a rounding error.
But for the really small players.
Right. For a business earning, let's say, 600,000 ringgit a year, which was originally going to be mandatory, that cost is a massive, disproportionate burden.
They don't have an IT department.
Exactly. No IT staff, no complex systems. They might use basic accounting software, maybe even just spreadsheets. Forcing them into an API integration environment meant expensive software, consultants, training. It just cuts right into their profit margins. It's a huge shock to their system.
And that's why this change in the threshold is so striking. They didn't just tweak it.
Not at all.
Can you just remind us what the original number was?
Absolutely. The original policy set the mandatory threshold for companies earning above 500,000 ringgit annually.
So by doubling that to 1 million ringgit,
they've instantly taken the entire micro business segment out of the mandatory equation. We're talking about thousands of neighborhood shops, small vendors, sole proprietors who are staring down this massive deadline.
it feels like very practical recognition that these firms just aren't built for that kind of regulatory shock.
It is. The administrative cost of forcing them to comply might have actually been more than the extra tax revenue the government would get from them. It's a pragmatic trade-off.
Which makes sense. The Prime Minister himself said he wanted the rollout to be more pragmatic and orderly. But, and this is the key question, doesn't exempting such a large group of businesses kind of weaken the whole point? What happens to all those transactions that are now flying under the radar?
That is the essential trade-off, you're right. And yes, it does create a loophole or at least a large pool of cash flow that's outside of real-time monitoring.
So why do it?
Because the government likely calculated that the immediate political cost and the potential for economic disruption if all these small businesses stumbled was a much bigger threat right now.
They're managing risk.
Exactly. The biggest targets for tax evasion are the larger companies, and they are still firmly on the timeline. This lets the Inland Revenue Board focus its resources where the real money is, instead of chasing a small warong owner over a compliance issue.
That brings us perfectly to the implementation timeline, because this exemption didn't just happen in a vacuum, did it? The whole rollout has been marked by delays.
That's right. We need to look at the tiers. The government had already shown it was being flexible because this was proving to be pretty challenging.
So the biggest companies, over 100 million, they're already on their way.
Yes, but it's the mid-size category that's interesting. The firms with turnover between 1 and 5 million ringgit, their start date was already delayed earlier this year.
And what was that delay specifically?
It was pushed back from July 1st, 2025 to January 1st, 2026. That gave them an extra 6 months. It was a clear signal that either the system or the businesses in that tier just weren't ready.
Okay, and this is where it gets really important. The smallest firms, the ones under 1 million, they were originally scheduled for the latest deadline.
That's right. Before this, they were looking at a mandatory start date of July 1st, 2026.
But what just happened is not another delay.
No, and this is the crucial point. This is a total and permanent cancellation of the mandatory requirement for them.
It's the difference between being told to wait your turn and being told you don't have to get in line at all.
A perfect analogy. It communicates finality, immediate relief, and that's exactly the message the government needed to send.
So we had this major policy shift, but we can't ignore the very specific political context here. The Prime Minister announced this during the Malaysia Madani Care for the People program in Kota Kinabalu, Sabah. The location and timing feel significant.
Oh, they are absolutely critical. They give us the why now part of the story. This move comes right after a period of, well, clear political turbulence and voter dissatisfaction.
And we have to bring in the statements from the Democratic Action Party's advisor, Lim Guan Eng. He was not subtle about why the ruling coalition struggled recently.
No, he was very direct. After the poor results in the November 29th Sabah state election, he publicly connected that voter dissatisfaction to specific federal policies.
It wasn't just vague unhappiness.
Not at all. He named 3 major grievances. First, the expansion of the sales and service tax, the SST. Second, he pointed directly at the confusion and the financial pain from this e-invoicing rollout.
And the third?
The ongoing complaints about delays in tax refunds, which really hurts business cash flow. 3 very concrete financial pain points for voters.
It is incredibly telling, then, that this huge policy reversal on e-invoicing happened so quickly after a major political figure from an allied party explicitly links that exact policy to losing votes.
It suggests the administration is acutely aware of the political cost of its economic reforms. When a policy starts to affect election results, the political calculus just changes overnight.
You have to be seen to be responding.
And this is maybe the single fastest way to fix one of those 3 big problems Lim Guan Eng pointed out. It's a textbook case of political damage control using policy.
This whole thing reveals a very delicate balancing act, doesn't it?
It does.
The government wants to push digitalization for the long-term health of the economy, but they realize they have to slow down, or they risk alienating a huge voting bloc, the small business sector.
That's spot on. Exempting companies under 1 million ringgit is a recognition that policy can't be one-size-fits-all. It acknowledges their limitations, no IT staff, limited capital. The government is basically saying, we want digitalization, but we'll apply the burden based on the ability to handle it.
It also sends a political signal, right? For the small business owner who felt overwhelmed, it's not just about saving money, it's a sign that their voice was actually heard.
Precisely. And this allows the overall agenda to move forward more smoothly with the big and mid-sized players, where the infrastructure is more robust anyway. By removing this headache for the microsegment, the government gets rid of a source of constant public anger.
They've effectively neutralized the e-invoicing issue as a political liability. The goal is still there, but it's now being applied in a much more strategic, less disruptive way. It really seems designed to regain voter confidence.
I agree. When the DAP advisor makes such a public link between a policy and an election loss, the response has to be concrete. And this is about as concrete as it gets. It puts the relief exactly where the pain was most concentrated.
So considering this major exemption for small businesses, do you think the government will now face pressure to review or perhaps ease other recent policy expansions, like the sales and service tax, that were also highlighted as major voter concerns? That's something for you to mull over. Remember to like and subscribe for more videos like this.